Nanabojo Nishnabe dok nitso jik. Binendo dem mampi awedem chigging donjaba. Nishin sagana mandagishgak. Minogishgat minwagi minogona ninwend nishnabek. The tam dash nui mi gwetruak. Negmajik dege jik minwa pognegejik. Hapchigo mi gwetchen dam dash ganwen amat nue pognan. Maba Shkinik kwek. So nui mi gwetruak gundak shkinik kwek. The meonan we mishomis pognan. To what I wanted to start off with is to say thank you to these two young ladies for Ganawenama on the Paganan, that they take care of this pipe. And we call it, they call this in English the Calumet pipe. And it's because it's longer than the other pipe stems. Now you see we have our pipe stems and they're from our elbow to the end of our fingertips. But you see how long these ones are. They're from our heart to the other end of our fingertip, and how long those pipe stems used to be. And they wrap it with that quill. And the quills, of course, are colored. And as we know with Nishnabek, that these all mean something, that this is actually codifying and understanding. But what I'm here to say is I don't know what that is yet. So we're slowly learning more and more. Oshme dash gdo kendana. All of us are learning a bit more, bit by bit, each time we gather and talk about these things. This maba dash pogan, minwa dash shkode, maba sema. And whenever we talk about or use that tobacco and we ask, just like what Leroy was saying this morning, we're asking for that help. We, Nadamadaza, to actually help ourselves. And that's what they used to, couple of old men used to say to me as well. And I heard Leroy talk about that you're doing this to help the people, but also to help yourself. So if I could get, I call them twins, but they're not twins. To just take that around to show them this, because what I understand this to have done, I don't really want to criticize in a sense, but what I think would have been more ideal is that fire's over there, and we should have been all around that fire. And then when this pipe would go around, it would go around in that circle. And although we're not smoking it, it would still go around. It would make its round, that wagon. So that's what I think we maybe next year. And that's the other thing is what I wanted to say is that this place here, Nidowaning, we call this Nidowaning in our language. And of course, some say it's Nidowanging. And under here, they say there's a tunnel, subterranean tunnel, that if you were to dive down here, you could dive and swim under that tunnel, and you'd end up in South Bay mode. And that's the Wange that they're talking about. And the Nido, of course, is the one that lives under there. And we know we have these Nido that live in all these subterranean tunnels, and that they actually travel all over this island, and they pop up here and there. Anyway, that's what this place means. Nidowaning, Nidowanging, where and that's what Manitoulin means too, up in up northern Lake Superior there. So this place was chosen as what's called Shkode Khan. And I got one letter written in Ojibwe, and they call it Zagaswa Shkode Khan. Zagaswa Shkode Khan. So, of course, some of you know what Zagaswa, somebody is smoking. And what we say for a meeting, Zagaswe Ding. Zagaswe Ding, they're giving each other a smoke. So that's what this place was known as, Zagaswa Shkode, where Shkode Khan, or the place, the fire, the council fire. That's what this is called. So this council fire was actually first ignited over in Niagara. And it was on behalf of the British, they ignited it in the Mohawks country, and then they moved it to Niagara. And then from Niagara, they took embers and they ignited a fire at Detroit, and then they ignited a fire at Michilimackinac. But of course, after the American Revolution, they had to move that fire because that Michilimackinac became the territory of the Chimokmanak. And then that council fire was moved for a time to St. Joseph's Island. And then when it was at St. Joseph's Island, after the War of 1812, that St. Joseph's Island got burnt down by the Americans. And the Anishinaabe retook Michilimackinac, and that was the Shkude Khan during the War of 1812. But then after that War of 1812, they briefly had the council fire at Drummond Island. And in Anishinaabe, we say Drummond Island, Potaganising. And there must be something, I haven't gone over to that place yet, Drummond Island, but a botagan is a mortar where you pound corn. That's what that, so there must be a place there, either a deep bay that looks like a botagan, or you know what that people at Kettle Point or at Dokis, they had these things called kettles. And that's what I think was also over there, why they called it Botaganising, place of the mortar. Anyway, that's where that council fire was from 1815 to 1829 at Drummond Island. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention at that time that the head chief at that time was Ojibwe chief Mabadashogima Ojibwe Ogima Nibakum Gijin Kazo. This Nibakum, he fought during the War of 1812, and he was Debaske's father. And Nibakum's father was named Oga, and Oga, that means pickerel in Ojibwe. Nibakum means a night thunderer. And then Debaske means, I was told, me manda ga egoa, bejiga kenzi ba, Johnny Debaske ba. This old man named Johnny Debaske told me what his surname meant. He said, when there's repeated flashes of lightning and there's no shadow, miwe Debaske. He says that's what Debaske means. So I take it to that means, in my understanding, we say in Debsini, I'm full. And then we say Debshkene, there's enough. And then so that Deb means full or as much as. And then Asage is about somebody coming with a light or doing something with a light. So this morning, as I heard somebody mention, it was Ginikwe, Gi de Bajmane, Bidasage Kweban. She talked about this one woman named Bidasage, and that's a Anishinaabe name, but it's also called Petoskey in the States, but that's Bidasage, it comes shining. So Debaske, when he said it's repeated strikes of lightning, there's no shadow, so I take it filled with light. That's what I take that name to mean. Of course, people have different interpretations. They say it means as far as the light goes, meaning the sun, or as far as the light goes, meaning the sun. So that's the Debaske story of that. But there was a council here in 1876 at Nantuaning. And at that time, Debaske came here as the chief of Chiging. But back then, Chiging was called Michigwednong. And Michigwednong, that actually means, that's the Anishinaabe name for cup and saucer. And it's Michigyu, that's an old spearhead made out of either the shin bone or the tine of an antler. And it was affixed to a spear handle, and you'd stab a beaver or neme, mik, neme, mage, nemegus. And then it would dislodge, and then you'd pull that in. Anyway, that spearhead, if you climb up that hill, that one lower part is the spearhead, and then the part you climb up, that's the spear handle. And that's so Michigyu, and then Udin refers to an actual promontory or a ridge. So when you go down to Toronto, you go to Spadina, that actually is a Spadinock. And when you go up from the shore and you go up all the way up Spadina Avenue, you go up to Casaloma, There's where that bluff is, and that's what that is, a Spadinok. That's why it's called Spadina, how we anglicized it or frankified it. But in Ojibwe, it means a Spadinok, a high ridge. Adin is a ridge. So Michigwadin, the ridge in the shape of a spear. So when you climb up that Chugwadnong, you come out to look out one, and there's like a barb. You're standing on the barb of a spear. Then you come out to this other part, you're standing on another part of the barb of a spear. Then at one point you get to that, you'll see that's really straight cut, that rock there. Gishkapka, they call it. It's cut there. So that's just why I wanted to talk about those chiefs is that when Debaske came there in 1876, he said, and this is how the chiefs used to talk, he says, I feel embarrassed when we get that, we call it Dibamadim, or some say Dibamaagewin, and that's your annuity. You get your pay. He says, I feel embarrassed when I come to get my pay, and then some of my children, this is how the chiefs used to talk, some of my children don't get it, but some of us do. And I say we should all get that. So anyway, that's what the Debaske had said. And then the Indian agent at the time says, well, it's only for those that have signed the treaty and that their fathers signed the treaty. And if their mothers married a Jaganash or a Wemptagoji or somebody that isn't a treaty Indian from this area, they're off the list. But Debaske came and he said, this is what we want. We want all of our people to be paid this. Dibamaagewin. And then the next thing he said, they said, we can't do anything about it. So he came back again. And then this time he brought a medal. And he brought all the chiefs around. I shouldn't say all the chiefs. He brought chiefs around. And one of the chiefs that he brought was Wakagijik from Wikwemkong. And he brought Flamand as well. And then their Pelche was at that council here at Manitoulin as well in 1878. And then he says to them at that time, he says, I brought other chiefs here to talk about how all of us should get this Dibamaagewin. We are all entitled to this. Ninuin Nishnabek, Kina Nishnabek. We are all entitled to this. Anyway, then he asked Wakagijik to get up and talk. And Wakagijik says, Nui Debajama Mabe Debaske Omishomsan. I want to talk about Debaske's grandfather, he said. Debaske's grandfather was named Oga. And then he says, Oga was the one, Apchago Wene Gikendan Nishnabe Nakanagewin. He said that Oga was the one who best knew the Anishinaabe laws. Meanwhile, Deshmaba Oga Ogi Kendan Manda Anishinaabe Oke. And he was the one who knew this land here. He was the Ojibwe, what we would now say Grand Chief. That was Oga, Debaske's grandfather. And he says, and so now what Debaske is asking here, that's why this should be obeyed. So Wakagijik was the one that said Oga was this great chief of the Ojibwe. And then others were great chiefs of the Odawa, Bodeadmi, and the rest. So that's what we talk about with that 24 Nations belt. But 24 Nations belt that you're going to see and hear about later, 12 of those are Eastern Confederacy and 12 are Western. And we're part of that Western Confederacy. So Debaske came here and he brought backup to back up his assertions. But of course that never happened. And all the people, whenever they would have the disbursement of the treaty annuity money, not everyone gets it still. And that's what he was trying to get accomplished at that time in 1878. And he came here to do that at Manitoulin because me mampi gipskane wishkude. They had ignited that council fire here at Manitoulin. And so this council fire, what I want to really try and emphasize too, is this council fire isn't really just for us Nishnabek. the British are actually supposed to be here too. The British are the ones that are supposed to come here and renew these agreements with us. And the British are supposed to come here and renew that belt with us. And the British are supposed to come here and smoke that pipe with us. And the British are supposed to come here and eat with us. So, but that's not happening. We're not there yet. So this morning, what we have here, she's bringing here this those dew claws, and migemenesak. Migas is that wampum, then migemenesak, that's wampum beads. So she's showing those, and they're painted with that vermilion. Those dew claws are painted with that vermilion. So I don't, usually when you paint something with that vermilion, it's red, and that means, of course, war or blood. So that's what it sounds like that was given for a specific purpose. It looks like that was given for a specific purpose. But I was talking to my uncle, and one of the interesting things, I've seen these dew claw garters and these dew claw necklaces and dew claw armbands on different things and in different museum collections. And so I've often wondered why you just make a rattle out of them too. So some people then would say, it's just to make a rattle because it makes a sound. But when I was talking to my uncle, I recorded him, and he was Gip Konan Noe Waoshkeshan. I recorded him skinning this deer. And then when he was skinning that deer, he got to the legs, and then he got to those dew claws, and he says in Ojibwe, you take that dew claw and you cut that off, and then you scrape it, and then you cut your dog's nose, and you put that in your dog's nose, and he'll be able to sniff out that deer. He says when you put that rubbing in there. Eh? So when I see those dew claws now, I think of that as a medicine to actually summon those Waashkeshwak Malge Westiak. We bow give set. If somebody wants to go hunting, Jeboa Nidoket, and they want to do a ceremony before that, then sometimes that's what they're doing. They use that kind of hunting medicine. So that might be one of those hunting medicines that you hear about. But don't believe me. Believe somebody else. Minoa dash. Nui minoa dash nui miguetuak Leroy. Minoa nixanten. Minoa tekna. Minoa ginique. Ginagum tawan nawe gison. Gimishomsanan. So I want to thank Nick Sant for being the firekeeper, and Leroy for singing and praying, and then also for Guinea Kwe for praying with that water, and then also Tekna for those berries that we did this morning. It's been a while since I went to a sunrise ceremony, and so we got a Jibwa Bidabang. Gidagoshna. I got here before sunrise, before the Bidaban isn't dawn. Bidaban means dawn's approaching. Waban is actually dawn. So I got here Bidabang, and then I saw that sunrise. Be Jiganishna be Gima Gi Gimaba Jigwa Kons Gi Jinkaza. There is this one chief that we know who signed the 1850 treaty. His name was Jigwa Kos, White Pine. But when he fasted one time, Gudingi Gimkade Ke wa Nishnabe, and Gyabe Bejik knows when Waawiindamaagewin. This fellow then earned another name, and that name is Zagajiweo Set. Zagajiweo Set, that means Zag is it's coming up in Zage, but the Jiu, Zagajiwe means it's coming over the mountain. And then Zagajiweo Se, it's coming up over So when that sun comes up, that's what that name means. That sun's coming up over the mountain. Zagajiwayose. So this morning, bidabang dash gio nap wab nong na king. Gi wab ma wa gizis zagajiwayose. So this morning I looked to the east and I saw that sun come rising up. And why I'm talking about this is this reminds us of our chiefs' names, the chiefs that fasted, the chiefs that asked Nidok, the chiefs that asked our grandfathers, our ancestors, our Adzokanak, our Dodemananik, Kadodemananik, Atazokanak, Gemishomsabananik, Minoakokomissabananik. They asked all these to help us to make a good decision. And so these people, they actually fasted for that as well, to have that understanding, to enter into how they were going to enter into that treaty. And of course, it didn't go all of our way the way we wanted it to, but that's why we're here today, is we actually have a bit of an understanding to work upon, to actually then try and work towards to get it how it was meant to be. Anyway, this Zagajueo said, when I saw that sun come up, that's who I was reminded of, was that pine, white pine, Jogoa Cons, who signed that 1850 treaty. And when that sun rose up, and I was thinking of when he must have been fasting, and he got that name, Zagajueo said. And then that's, of course, you read into these names more, they don't just literally mean that one level. There's another level of what that name means. And it's, of course, that light is appearing and things are illuminating. And when this Jogoa Cons fasted another time, he wanted to be a war chief. And some say, Anen Kedok Miao Set. And Miao means going exactly, eh? Miao Se, he walks right a straight way or with deliberate purpose. Miao Se Wenene, they call that. And some say Nigano Se Wenene is the war chief, eh? Now they just say Migazo Wenene, but that could be just somebody at the anchor in. But these Miao Se Wenene and Nigano Se Wenene, Nagano Set, Miao Set, those are the war chiefs, the ones that will lead directly into battle, the ones that have an exact purpose that they're going to follow. Anyway, so he got that, when he fasted again another time, he fasted numerous times. Nimna ching gim kade ke maba Jogoa Cons. And he had told somebody that when he fasted, he said, I wanted to be blessed by the sun. Gizis nido. Nui bugosenama gizis nido. I'm praying to that, I'm beseeching that gizis nido. And he says, a war chief always tries to get that gizis nido. And the reason is he'll have an aerial view, but also it's all lit where his enemies are, where the potential traps are. He can see everything. That's why he goes for that gizis nido. That's what he said. That's what a war chief tries to do. So that's who he was blessed, and we know that he got blessed by that gizis nido, and he fought during the War of 1812, and he went down to Niagara, and he fought at Queenston and Queenston Heights and other battles all along the Niagara, and he came back up. So that's who I was reminded of, and we're talking about our treaty relationship, but we're also talking about our chiefs that participated in that and engaged in that. The other one that I was reminded of this morning as I turned once in a while, and this Bejik Wikwemko and then Daryl standing in front of me blocking my view, and I'm trying to have a spiritual moment. Anyway, I had to step aside a bit, and that Jesus come rising up, naache spimming a gujing, what Jesus, that sun got up even higher. And then I was reminded of my friend Zenba Namit, his Nishnabé name, Louis Debasque, my late friend. As he told me about Oga, He told me the story that it was passed down to him. And I don't have time to tell the whole story, but part of that story is Oga was held prisoner on this boat, but eventually he broke his chains and then he dove off that boat. And then it was in the evening though, and when he dove off that boat, the sun was just about setting, and then the sun had a reflection all across that water. And he says, "Mi with piawaya za sabazum," that somebody then, if they looked there, they would be blinded. They couldn't see what was going on. So that's where Oga dove, and then he swam right straight, followed that path of that sun, and he got to land, and that's how he escaped. That Oga escaped persecution from the Chimokman at that time. So when I was watching that this morning, and once Daryl got out of the way, then that sun, that sun got even higher, and I was waiting for that, because it was halfway at first. The sun reflection was halfway across the bay, and it made a straight line, and then it got up further, and it went 3/4 way, and then I waited a bit more, then it got up even a bit higher, and it made a straight line right across this bay. And then I was thinking that then reminded me of another Bejiko Gema Odawa Gema Gi Makabi on 1836 Waawiindamaagewin. This one, he put his name on that 1836 treaty. And this one was Wakagijik's father, and that one's name is Bemasage. And Bemasage means he goes along shining, like if he just went along this way. But they translated his name as the path of the sun, Bemasage. And so when I've always thought of the path of the sun, I just thought, going right across the sky, up all the way down from the east, going all across the sky, then setting in the Ningabi and Nangmage Pingishmaktakea. That's what I thought they meant by the path of the sun. Anyway, then when I saw this morning, then I thought, Ganabach Bemasage, that this is also the path of the sun, when it's making that light right across the bay off the water, not teshing, that sun is reflecting off that water, and it made a straight line all the way across, and one. So that was when I saw that reminded me of that one who signed that 1836 treaty named Bemaske, and his son was Wakagijik, and his other son was named Francis Metsagi. I'm not 100% sure if I'm saying Metsagi right, but this Mabadash Metsagi gi Nishnabebi gi Neta Nishnabebi ge Maba Metsagi. This fellow, he could write in Ojibwe. And so why we picked this date, May 23rd, is, of course, you know that the treaty was signed in October of 1862, but the Wequemco and Niniwok, they didn't sign it. And then in January, they had 1865, Mampi Nidominising, Wakagijik, meanwhile, Majakkonage. Majakkonage was the Ojibwe chief here, Beaver Clan chief. And Wakagijik came here in 1865. They had a debate that was written down, and they talked about ceding about the treaty. And Majakkonage, what I think that name means, but it's kind of an archaic name. I've asked a couple of speakers; they don't agree with me, but that's all right. Majakwat means it's a clear day. Majakkonage, he makes it a clear day. That's what I think the name means, but it sounds odd to people when I say that. But there's another chief. They moved back to Magnetawan. Bem Gijgonokke was his name. Bem Gijgonokke. He makes the day go. That's what they translated that name as. So that's why I think that Majokkonage, they just translated it as fine day, that name. But Majakkonage, he makes it a fine day. That's what I think it means, but I'm not 100%. Anyway, they had this debate, and they said that, Mijak Konage says to Wakagijik, Maba Mijak Konage Ginan Wakagijigon. He says to him, you talk about your children, you spoke finely about your children and how much concern you have of your children. Well, we too, we have a deep concern and love for our children, but we think that this way is going to be the way to provide for them in the best way we know how. And Wakagijik said, this is all that we have here, this island. We shouldn't break it up. This island is like a dish. And we said, we gathered at Michigwednong, and we said we would treat this island as a dish. Why would we then break it up and break our dish? So anyway, we'll have Ken here later this afternoon. He'll talk about that dish with one spoon as well. So who I was reminded of this morning was that Bemasage, when that light come across, right across the bay, and it was so straight, and it made me think of that. Maybe that's another Bemasage. But it also reminded me of that Jigua Kons, because he said when he had fasted, he had told them, people near the end of his days, that when he fasted as a young man, there was a road, he said, it was either the 4th day of his fast or the 9th day, I forget which one, but that there was a road that appeared before him, and on either side of the road, there was these flags along this road, and he started following it, and a voice told him to follow it. He says, my child, follow this road. So he followed it, and then next he knew he was walking up into the sky. And then when he was up in the sky, they said, this is what I offer you. And he looked down, he was up in the sky, he looked down and he saw kind of like tents like this stood up. And he said, those ones over there, those tents, that's the Jaganash Ogemak. Those are the generals over there. And then you see those Wigwaman over there. Those are the Nishnabek. You will take your place among those as well. And there's over here, off to this side, those are the Chimokmanak. So he says, those are all the generals and leaders there. And you too will take your place amongst them in time. And you will also be remembered for this. So again, that's what that path, that sunlight reminded me of when I saw that this morning. So that's the benefit of getting up early in the morning. Come and watch, and then maybe you got this, Leroy won't give you hell again. Leroy gave us hell this morning. Before the sun got up, Leroy gave us hell, saying you got to get up early and start all this. So that's what our ancestors Apchago Kendasok Kimishomsa Bananik, Kokamis Bananik, Ogima Bananik, Nalganzajik, all our leaders, our chiefs, our grandfathers and grandmothers, they knew to look at Shkakamekwe, Gijgong, being. They looked for all these different signs of how to proceed. They asked for something to show them to how to help themselves. We not zoak. We not zoak to help themselves. So the other thing that I want to talk a little bit about is I saw this morning as well. I'm Apchago Gim Natawak Gunda Negmajik Beneshinsak. All these little birds I was listening to, they were singing, and they sounded really good to me. And then I was looking around when I'd hear different ones. Gin Datwak Negmajik Beneshinsak. And I'm looking around to try and see which ones are, if I can identify which birds are singing, if I can pick off their sounds, their songs, and then know which one is which. And then gi wap ma bejik, kaigo gachin si. This one wasn't small. but it wasn't an eagle either. And it wasn't Gai Awasi Kek, and it wasn't a hawk. So it was one of these ones, but I couldn't make a positive determination. But this is what the one that I thought was what we call BP Givazens. This BP Givazens is the American kestrel. And then there's also another one that's called a merlin. And they call that one Megaze Onze, eagle fighter. For whatever I don't really know why they call that one eagle fighter. But that's the merlin, they call that one. And they're like a little hawk, and they're almost like a falcon. Anyway, this one went flying around here. And so what I was thinking about as I was in gi bizindwak nagamwat kunda beneshisak. I'm listening to these birds singing. And then I see also in gi wap makunda beneshisak siganakok. Siganakok and gi wap mak. And I see those ones that we call the siganok, blackbirds. And that blackbird, that's the one who used to be a keeper of these wampum belts. It was Jean-Baptiste Siganok. He was the one that kept these belts, and he's the one who could sign his own name. So he signed his own name to that 1836 treaty. And then he was a witness to that 1850 treaty in Sault Ste. Marie, because he worked for Chigama. He worked for the Jaganash at that time as an interpreter. And then he signed the 1862 treaty here as well. And he said that time that he said in Manitoulin here, right around behind us here, or I guess behind me, ahead of you, there used to be a building here, 2-story building, and this is where they had the treaty gathering in 1862, and they tried unsuccessfully in 1861. But as Siganok was the one in 1836, Bondhead came here. He came here, and Sir Francis Bondhead, who was then the Lieutenant Governor General of Upper Canada, he was come here to actually told to cut costs, just like how our present politicians are told to always come and cut costs. And one of the most expensive things that was draining the colonial government was what they called the Indian presents. And these Indian presents were what was delivered annually at these council fires. And these annual council fires that I mentioned were at Niagara, then sometimes at York later, Detroit, then Fort Malden or Amherstburg, and then Michilimackinac, and then Drummond Island, St. Joseph's Island, then briefly at Penetanguishene, then Migo Mampi, Nidawaniing. This became the council fire between the British and all the different Nishnabek. Givtai, Enswayanagizwat Gunda Nishnabek. All the different kinds of Nishnabek around the Great Lakes. This was the council fire with the British and them, as well as that one at Fort Malden. So these are the ones that entered into that alliance with the British at that time, and the British agreed, and that's what that 24 Nations belt is about. They said that you will never sink into poverty, and that's what Jean-Baptiste Siganok said to Bondhead at that time. Bondhead came here to deliver the presents, and he came here to deliver the news. Gi bidajma maba chigama. He came here to tell them, I'm going to cut the presents. And then that's when Siganok got up, brought the belts out, and he recited what the meaning was. And then this Bondhead was so enamored with that, he said, let's make a treaty. And then that's when so he got Thomas Gummersall Anderson, who is the residing Indian agent here, and he wrote out that treaty right here on the spot. He wrote 2. One he gave to, they just said one of the Odawa chiefs. So I imagine it was a Siganok, but it also could have been Mokmanish. And then they took one back for the Canadian side. And in 2011, at the Ojibwe Culture Foundation, we had a gathering here, and we actually borrowed that original treaty, and it was at the OCF there for a while. Anyway, so Jean-Baptiste Siganok, at that time, 1836, he saved our presents. They were gonna cut those out. And then what Siganak actually was able to do as well at that time was secure all of Manitoulin and the surrounding islands. It wasn't just him, but all the different chiefs that were here. Then they made all of Manitoulin and all the surrounding islands supposed to be Indian territory, Anishinaabe territory. And that was what the 1836 treaty was. And then it was an affirmation of the 1764 Treaty of Niagara and the issuing of those presents. So that's what they ended up agreeing to at that time. And so that's what was told, and that was what was written down. But if you actually go follow the rules of the Royal Proclamation and the additional instructions of Lord Dorchester, that didn't follow the proper protocol of making treaties, because he's supposed to tell people ahead of time he's going to come and make a treaty, and he's supposed to tell all the people that are invested that they're to come and to be part of this treaty. But we know all the different chiefs that signed that treaty, and they signed it with their dodems, and Anderson wrote beside their names their dodem. So they signed the dodem, but then Anderson wrote in pencil later what each of those dodems are. So the one mystery that I'm still working on is I know that Jean-Baptiste Siganak could sign his name, so he wrote on the first page of that 1836 treaty, J.B. Siganak. And then his son, Samson Irwishkosh, who was the chief at Jishiguaning, he signed his name too. He could write his name. So he wrote Irwishkosh on the treaty, the first page of the treaty. And then Mokmanish, he didn't, I used to think he wrote his name, but I'm not a handwriting expert, but it looks like actually Anderson wrote Mokmanish, and then Mokmanish put his X to it. And that's the mystery, why I'm wondering why Mokmanish didn't put his dodem to it, like the others did. Then next was Gimewan, and he put his Bear Clan. But if you look at that Bear Clan, you look just at the picture, it actually looks more like a buffalo than a bear. But what Anderson did later, he wrote in pencil that it's a bear. Then you go to the next page, and then Kitchimokman signed it, and it looks like a crab, the way that dodem's made. But in it, actually, he wrote, Anderson wrote beside it in pencil, moose head. And then Moose Nakon, he has that what we call fork stick clan. And then that Bemasage, same one, he has that fork stick clan. And so they draw that fork stick, and then Anderson wrote beside their fork stick. And then Edwish, he signed it as well, and then he put his snake, he drew his snake there. And then that's all Anderson wrote was snake. But there's all kinds of snakes. Anyway, subsequent petitions, I find out that dodem is Mazandamo. And so you know that a Mazandamo is that water snake. That was his clan, that Edwish. And then you had Giok Kons at Teslan, and he put that Jijak, that dodem, Jijak, a crane. And then you had Bataswe, that's the chief at Mississauga at that time. And then you have Espanol. And this is the interesting one that people don't really quite believe. And I don't know if my friends here, Darlene Johnson and I used to talk about this. Because it looks like in English, it looks like it could say lark beside it. But I think it says cock. And then this morning too, Gi non doit na bese. And that's what I think it is. And when you look at the picture there, you see it's got the tail feathers are real long and big, and the claws are, but he drew them sideways. Anyway, Anderson wrote there, but in pencil, it kind of looks like it could be lark or it could be cock. Anyway, subsequent papers there, Bejek Jaganashi Kwegi Baja or the Shkonaganing or the Zgamaka. She went over to Sagamuk, she did this research, and she asked about clans. And then she said number of people there said anybody of the French persuasion, their totem is a chicken. So nobody wants to be chicken clan. But it's the reason that is because we Nishnabek follow their father's clan. So when their father was Wemtegosh, that in this area, this is how I understand it, Mieje and Sastama Manda Dodemwina. That when your father was a Wemtegosh, you see when the Wemtegosh, the king of France, marked any merchandise, they stamped it, and it had that rooster on there. And so now if you watch the World Cup and you watch the soccer team and you look at the French team, you'll see they have that rooster on their chest. And this goes back to Christianity. And the Gauls. The Gauls had the gall to go up to France. And when they went up there, they introduced their totem. And to them, it isn't looked down upon like KFC or chicken fingers or anything like that. The rooster in Christianity is the bringer of light. And then, some of you older people may know, maybe some of you younger people, that they told, that Jesus told Peter, before dawn, before the crow, what's the word he used? Before the crow, before the cock crows 3 times, you will have denied me. So the significance of the cock crowing is that he's bringing Jesus and bringing light. So that's why whenever we heard this, that was the other one that I was reminded of. The other chief is Espanol from Sudbury, from Espanola, from Sagamok. Espanol is the chief, and that's why I think his name is, that beside his totem, I think it's cock, because I think his father was a Wemtegosh, and that's why he has that totem of the Nabese, and that it's actually the harbinger of light, the harbinger of Christianity. That's what the Gauls why they used that rooster. So the clan isn't really chicken. You could say chicken, but it's more rooster. And then you have Shawanaswe there, and then I understand it to be pike, and that's what Anderson wrote beside his name, Shawanaswe, pike. But Shining Turtle says it's sturgeon. And then we have Waawiindamaagewin from French River area, and it says a Mick, and he signed with that beaver clan. And then Bem Guneshkang from Manitoulin, and he signs it with that Adikadotem. And that's Bem Guneshkang then moves to Chiging, and those people end up becoming called Bebamash. Bebamash, they're sailing about on the water, or they're soaring about in the sky. Bebamash. Anyway, those are the clans of the 1836 treaty. And then that 1850 treaty, they're all signed with X's. So that's why it's different. And then the 1862 treaty, 1850 treaty, 1836 treaty signed with clans, 1850 treaty signed with X's, 1862 treaty signed again with totems. And then Bem Guneshkang, he signed all 3 of those from Chiging and Manitoulin. He signed 1836 with his Adik totem, but he didn't put the antlers on. And one of the parts we're trying to research is, why didn't he include the antlers that time? And then 1850, he signs with Nex. Then 1862, he signs a treaty, and his Adik totem has all the antlers then. So we don't know if it's time of year or if it's his age in life. Anyway, that's his totem. So Espanol that's who else I was reminded of when that rooster was crowing this morning. Harbinger of the sun. That's what that would be as well. So when I was standing here, watching the sun, listening to our elders and our ceremony makers greet the sun with song, and greet the sun with tobacco and words and smoke and berries and water, that's what I was thinking of, was our past chiefs, our former chiefs that signed these treaties, our former chiefs that had an understanding of what they were entering into, and how they thought this was going to work out for the betterment of their grandchildren and great grandchildren. So as we know now, it didn't really work out the way they thought it was gonna, but we still have something, and we have people working on the cases to get some kind of restitution to a lot of what went wrong. So one of the things as well that what I was looking at when that sun rose, but this was last night when I saw the sun going down last night. I was coming from Waawiindamaagewin, and I was going home at the Chiging. And then we come up over that hill coming out of Waawiindamaagewin, and then that sun was just red. It was just red. And then that's what I was thinking of last night when they told us, the British, Mi we gakadat Jaganash. This is what the Jaganash said to us. Nanda wabandan gadabanoji mo bimadzuin, when Jimok said Jesus. Look for the life of your children where the sun rises. Kawab ma Jesus jimaskwap ka goching. You will see that sun rise red. The bishko eje meskukunyeya. And you will see that it's the same as the color that I wear. And you will know then that these promises are still in effect. So, and that's why you hear some chiefs say, as long as the grass grows, the rivers flow, and the sun shines, and the British wear red, these promises will be in effect. So that's what we look at, that the British still wear red. And in Chiging anyway, it isn't the OPP that comes to deliver the Bamaagewin or the Bamaadam. They don't come. It isn't the OPP that come. It's the RCMP that come to deliver that $4, Niwabik. And the reason that I believe is, one, some say it's because it's federal, but to me, it's because they wear red. And it's to us Nishnabik, a mnemonic to us Nishnabik, that's still in effect. That all those promises that they entered into, that's what we use. Now we use the writing, but before we used to use that grass, that water, the air, and that sun. That's what we use to remember, and these wampum belts and this pipe. That's why I wanted to get Naomi and Shay to take that pipe around and that wampum string. So that's what we used to do, and now this is starting to grow stronger for us, Anishinaabe people, to use this, to understand it, and to think about it, to pray upon it, and then to offer tobacco to that fire, and then to ask for that help, for that understanding. So one of the other things is, I'll leave stuff for Bejignichke, we debat dan, Nongo Shkwanak quick. I'll leave some stuff for Ken to talk about. But I'll have, so he'll talk about those belts. But where's that, oh, you must have come up here, DJ. You can be my Vanna. So this is, in 1836, the treaty was signed. 1837, they came back. Bondhead was supposed to come back, and he made a flag, a special flag, to represent the alliance between the Anishinaabe and the British. And but that flag that he made, it had what they call the Union Jack, the ensign in the one corner, the postage stamp. Now we say at bingo, postage stamp. That's where the Union Jack was on that flag. But then it had a crown in the middle of the flag, and I guess Naomi and Shay didn't find the other. We had the other flag made as well, because then under that crown, then they had a lion and a mick. Meshibiji minwa mick nama ying kche ui kwan. So under the crown, they had that lion and that mick, and they said this represents, the lion represents the British, and the mick represents the Anishinaabeg. And this flag represents the alliance. So Bondhead was supposed to come here in 1837 and deliver that flag. And so they had actually, if you read Anna Jameson's book, Summer Rambles and Winter Studies, she actually came up here in 1837. And when she had come up, she had witnessed the delivery of presents. And then Bondhead couldn't make it because of the Upper Canada Rebellion. So he didn't make it, so he got Samuel Peters Jarvis to actually bring this flag up. Not this one, the other flag. So take that around, Vanna, please. And then, so that flag had the lion and the beaver there. And then I forgot to mention when I talked about the Wemtegosh, that their clan is that rooster. The same thing, if your father was a Jaganash, meaning a British, your Dodem in this area, my great aunt told me this, is your Dodem would be that Mishibiji, that lion. And actually, I saw this in the Shegwinda petition in 1865, where they wanted their reserve to be bigger because they said we weren't fully enumerated. And in that petition, they write down who should get 100 acres and who should get 50 acres. And then beside each of those, their name, the acreage, and then they put their clan. And then they showed who was who. Anyway, there was one fella named John Mitchell, and his father was the doctor at Drummond Island, Dr. Mitchell, but he married a Anishinaabe. And then he signed that, him and his daughter signed that petition with a lion. And then there was also a fella in Waawiindamaagewin that signed that same petition that I talked about with the that were signed with the Dodems and the chiefs. They made a bylaw against anyone bringing liquor into Waawiindamaagewin. And then that one named Jonas, his name was Jonas Wasagijik, and he drew that lion, and then beside it said Meshibiji. That was his Dodem. Anyway, so that's how the Anishinaabe looked at that the Wemtegosh had that rooster as a Dodem, and the lion was for the British. And then we had all of our Dodems. So that's what this was about, to have the crown. And I didn't like, we remade that just because Anna Jameson, if you read that Anna Jameson book, Mokmanish and Shingwak have a debate, and Edewishkosh have a debate of who actually should keep that flag. And then they say this flag should actually be kept here on Manitoulin, and Jigwa Kons is trying to get that flag, and he's actually trying to get the council fire moved from here and move it back to St. Joseph's Island. So he said we should take this log and the embers therein and move the fire back to St. Joseph's Island, and we should take this flag with it and make the Zagaswanishkode Ode St. Joseph's Island. Anyway, Mokmanish or Edewish won the debate, and then that's when they kept that flag here, and it would fly over that whenever the Miwipi Bagumbedekwe Napkwan. Whenever that ship arrived here, that flag would be up flying. So Crystal Miigwans Mikanak and I got together and we decided we're going to remake this flag, we said. I said, I don't like us being under the crown. So the crown was on top, and then the Mick and the lion were under that crown. And I says, we're not subjects, so we shouldn't be under the crown. So that's why I got this here. And so, DJ, you'll see, we put that circle. Of course, we all know what the circle means. And then if you look behind the circle, you'll see that it has like what we would now say is medicine wheel. But if you know the Union Jack, you can see in behind there, in that flag is the Union Jack, represented in there, and that's the British flag. And then we said, well, I was saying that our treaties, when they would talk about this Migas, that Migas comes from the bottom of the ocean. And they would sometimes tie these pipes with a string of wampum, and then they'd hang those eagle feathers from those calumet pipes. So that pipe, that calumet pipe that Shay and Naomi took around, those long ones, they would have an eagle wing or the tail feathers of an eagle draped under it. And then in between those would be wampum beads. And so to me, you know, of course, you've heard different elders talk about this, that pipe stem, kitchiotic, we call it kitchiotic or a kitch, that it's straight, that it represents that truth. And then that pipestone, of course, represents that rock. And then when you tie that, as we know, the one that flies the highest is that eagle. And then the one that comes from the depths of the ocean is that Migas. So what I was saying is that this is what I understand. Nobody told me this. So my wife says, you're making stuff up again. But right from the bottom of the ocean all the way to as high as that eagle can fly, that's what all these promises mean. And so that's why that thunderbird is up there. And then that's why that being in that flag is at the bottom. So that represents that Migas and that thunderbird. And then that lion is coming from the east. That's the British coming from the east to our country. And then that's that eagle from the west, the thunderbird also coming from the west to meet that lion. So that's what this means. And so you'll see, if you look at that Union Jack, you'll see that kind of faintly in the background there, but that's what that represents as well. So it represents that east and west, and that the highest reaches of the sky and the lowest reaches of the earth, and even under the earth. And so that's why when we're talking about that, mi ko mampi enjejin kadek nidowaning, there's a subterranean tunnel here, and that's what this references, and that's who frequents that cave and that tunnel, is that one there. I don't say what I was taught was not to say his name in the summertime. You don't want to call him. So I don't really say his name, but anyway, you know who I'm talking about. And he can go under here, under this, and he can go, there's all kinds of tunnels under here, under Nidominising, and it goes, and it's connected to, in Sgomok they call that Mount McBean, Nadawayojing. But some say it means Nadaway Gujing, but I understand it to be Nadaway Wajing. Wajiu means a mountain, Nadaway Wajing. And there's a lake on top of there. Anyway, what I was told was, and there used to be a sawmill on the channel, is there was a great battle there between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg, and we were victorious there. And then what had happened is the bones of those Haudenosaunee people went under that tunnel, and they found them on top of that mountain there that they called Nadawayojing. And that's Mount McBean, but there's a lake there, and all around that lake on top of that mountain, that's where those bones were. So that's why they called it that, Nadawayojing. But some say Nadaway-Gojing, and the more gruesome tale that they tell of it is that Gojing means where somebody's hanging, that they hung up the Nadaway there. But the way I understand it is that the battle was actually at what we call Little Detroit by Algoma Mills. There's a little straightway there. And one of the chiefs lured the Haudenosaunee war party there, and then they ambushed them there. And then when they were all killed, then after their bones were drying up and stuff, then that's when those bones went up there. And then my friend there, my brother-in-law's father was telling me, we went out there. He says, there used to be a sawmill here. And then what would happen is all those Bisabojagan would go up there. You'd go up to that top of that Lake Lacloche on Mount McBean, and there'd be all kinds of sawdust there and the shavings from that. And it goes under that tunnel as well up there. So that was the other one, Waawiindamaagewin. Then the other battle we had was on Highway 6 here from Espanola, coming to the island here. Highway 6, the place now called Willisville. But I guess we had a bucket of chicken, and then the Nottawick wanted to take it on us. So we lured them to this place where that quarry is, that Lawson Quarry, across from where the falls are. And then that's where they lured them there, and there's a place they say, Mio de Desapkak. There's a ledge there at that cliff, and there's enough for somebody to stand there. There's two versions of this. One, it's the chief and his son standing there. The other, it's they put a woman there and her daughter. And then the Haudenosaunee came up, and they wanted to capture them. And then, but on top of that, Gishkapka, on top of that, Gidabik dash Nishnabek, Gi Babichike wak Kando wak Gi Kando wak Nishnabek. They were waiting to ambush them. So when the Haudenosaunee came, then they threw rocks at them. And then they splintered up, destroyed their elm bark canoes. They had elm bark canoes, the Haudenosaunee. Busted them up, and then they tried to get ashore, and then they started killing them. So that was another place where and that place was called Eshidapkissininding. Eshidapkissininding. And that's by Willisville. The reason I bring these two up is after the 1850 treaty was signed, then they had an enumeration of who was actually to get the Bamadoin, or the Bamaagewin, that annuity. Then the chief at it was Waawiindamaagewin and the Shawanaswe, that their band, they, instead of saying that their band was called Oga Zibe, Pickerel River, which actually was what Whitefish River was called, that Whitefish Falls, and others called it Oga Mikan. Anyway, that's where the pickerel go up the spa, so that's what it was called that. So they didn't call it that, or Tikkamegazibing, they didn't call it that. On that actual requisition to pay that band, the Waawiindamaagewin and the Shawanaswe band, they said owning a reserve at Shidapkissininding. And that's the place where we fought against the Haudenosaunee. And then they said for the band, the chief and band owning a reserve at Waawiindamaagewin, a Nam Sin. Says, and on the way, of course, for these two chiefs and the band owning a reserve at Waawiindamaagewin, this is the Robinson Huron annuity, and this was in 1851 where they listed those two. And I always thought that that's significant that they didn't say Zgamak, because Zgamak actually was already known as that by then. But then they in their treaty annuity requisitions, they actually put up that it was where they had a battle with the Haudenosaunee. And I always thought that was significant. So I think I'll stop there. I was actually going to go home before Josh asked me. Anyway, I see Glenn Gibadakto Gevo. Glenn's ear stood up now. He's ready to talk. He's got all his notes. So, miigwech to all the people that worked this morning, and I want to nui miigwech aka enkijik. I want to thank all the people, the organizers, and then the ceremonial people again, the ones that opened this up in a good way, and then also each and every one of you that stuck around to listen, and panay dash nzam don. That and I told Josh, give me the sign to quit. Anyway, I got the mic, so I I ended up going longer than I wanted to. But I wanted to talk about that flag, and they asked me to talk a bit about that pipe. But Ken will tell us about these belts in the afternoon. So anyway, miigwech kinenchiek inam dabiek miigwech.